Very good morning, my dear teacher friends.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
sir.
sir.
Morning, sir.
Okay, fine.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Okay. So today we shall discuss about the concept of this biodiversity and environment, and also a few aspects related to conservation of this biodiversity. Well, my dear friends, we know that globally there is a hue and cry that we should protect biodiversity, we should conserve biodiversity. What happens if this biodiversity is not going to be protected, if it is not going to be conserved? What is the importance of this biodiversity? Do we really need biodiversity? Is it necessary to have biodiversity globally? So all these questions are always boggling in the minds of many individuals. And even a common man or a scientist and everybody, if at all you see, if anybody thinks of that we shall protect an animal, we shall protect a plant, we shall protect this one, like that something if they say, this is not important for us. Only whatever that is important for us, only that much we should conserve, only that much we should protect. Like that is the attitude of some people. But in spite of all these things, whether we knew about the importance of a plant or an animal, with all these things in the mind, we should think of why this biodiversity is important and what exactly is this biodiversity and why we should protect this biodiversity or conserve this biodiversity. So all these things, probably when I share a little aspects of these things, including the basic concepts, so you will be in a position to understand. And then of course, as usual, you can have any discussions or clarifications, any questions at the fag end of my lecture. Okay, fine. First and foremost thing is that there are two terms. Already I have told you what is meant by environment probably in the previous class, isn't it? That is the immediate surrounding of any living entity. We call it as the environment, immediate surrounding of any living entity. Now biodiversity. What is this biodiversity? The term bios refers to life or living thing. The term bios refers to life or living thing. Diversity, right? Diversity refers to the variations or the varieties that are existing in this life. So varieties of life forms, varieties of living entities are existing. Now, prior to this, I would like to say that we know that all the resources that we are using day to day in our life are called natural resources. And these natural resources excuse me, are very broadly, as I told even in the previous class, are categorized into indestructible and destructible natural resources. Indestructible natural resources include air and water, which cannot be destroyed by the interference of mankind. Whereas among destructible natural resources, which include soil, forest, wildlife, and minerals, soil, forest, and wildlife, even after destruction, can be replaced back into the nature, and that is why you call them as renewable resources. If it cannot be replaced back into the nature after destruction through the interference of mankind or anthropogenic activities, so it can be referred to as non-renewable resources, as for example, mineral resources. Now, if you look at all these natural resources, forest and wildlife are the only resources which possess the living entities. So forest, as in a general term, is referred to as forest. Forest is referred to as an assemblage of the plants or the trees in a given area, and wildlife generally for the assemblage of animals in this forest. We call it as wildlife. Once again, I am reminding you that this is only for our convenience. Conventionally, we are using the term forest and wildlife. Strictly speaking, both plants and animals refer to the wildlife only. However, these forests and wildlife which possess living entities do show variations, isn't it? No plant is exactly like another individual. No human being is like exactly another individual. We do show variations. So this variation that exists, that manifests among the living entities is called diversity. Now, this diversity of the living entities can be seen in all parts of the globe, in all the ecosystem, whether it is a terrestrial ecosystem or an aquatic ecosystem, whether the ecosystem is present on the land surface or water surface. So in all these cases, you see, for example, if you see a pond or a lake or a river or a grassland or a forest, any of these ecosystem, the living entities present in that particular area show variation. Same kind of animals, same kind of plants do not exist, isn't it? So that means from one biogeographical area to another biogeographical area, from one ecosystem to another ecosystem, the composition of living entities also varies. The composition of living entities also vary. That means these living entities are an integral component of any ecosystem. They are a must. If there must be a functioning of an ecosystem, there must be the living entities. The living entities of autotrophic nature, heterotrophic nature. That is, the green plants which can manufacture the food materials, and the animals which are dependent upon these plants for their food energy. So both of these should be there. Also, there should be microbes, because when all these plants and animals are going to die, they should be decomposed, and that decomposition is taken up by the microorganism. So thus, all living entities, including microbes. So microbes are also the living entities, are a must. So they are all present in all ecosystems. They are present in all ecosystems. So that is why we can say these living entities are an integral component of any ecosystem. Integral component, a must and should component like, isn't it? And also, whenever they form the composition or the components of an ecosystem, the interaction between these living entities is not a simple one. It is a very complex one, isn't it? It's a very complicated one. One is giving food energy, another is taking, another is using, another is growing. Like when you grow and develop, you are going to be used by somebody. So different animals, different plants, they are all having the different types of biological interactions. So that is why they form a complex structure. So the living entities forms a complexity in an ecosystem, though they are the integral component of an ecosystem. So with all these complexities, with all these living entities variation, and as they form the integral component, they do show variation. Suppose you take a drop of water from one pond to another pond. If you compare it, the type of living entities, the quantum or the number or the size of the population varies from one pond to another pond, one ecosystem to another ecosystem. Whether this ecosystem may be, as I told you, in any part of the globe. So that variation that we can see among the living entities, we call it as diversity. We call it as diversity. See, look at human beings. The way in which you appear externally, right? That means it is called biologically phenotypically. Phenotypically is the external appearance of an individual, right? So phenotypically, or the external appearance of an individual from one region to another region, show variation. Suppose the people, how they look like in Karnataka or Kerala or Chennai or Manipur or Nagaland or Assam or in China or in Japan or in UK or in USA. Look at this, lot of variations we do come across. So externally itself you can make out. That is called the phenotypic variation, isn't it? So this phenotypic variation is also because of what? The variation in the genetic makeup of an individual. In the genetic makeup of an individual. So I will come to that little bit later. Now we shall see what exactly The definition of biodiversity says the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, or any other aquatic ecosystem, in which they form an ecological complexes, isn't it? So they are the integral component, and they do show variation within the species, between the species, and also between the ecosystems. So this variation or diversity can be seen within the species. Now, the species name of human beings is Homo sapiens. So all human beings are considered as Homo sapiens. All population of the lion is called Felis leo. All population or individuals of rosewood plant is called Dalbergia latifolia. That means every living entity is having a scientific name. And this scientific name he is having two names. The first name is always called genus. The second name is always called species. So every living entity is having two scientific names. The first name is called the genus. The second name is called species. Now, I do not go into the detailed definition and description of this genus and species. Just for your understanding, I am telling you what is a species. A group of individuals which resemble one another very closely, both in the external features as well as in the reproductive behavior. They are grouped as species. That means a group of individuals which are capable of interbreeding among themselves, inter means in between, inter means in between. A group of individuals which are capable of interbreeding among themselves to produce fertile offsprings are generally referred to as species. See, all human beings breed themselves among themselves to produce the young ones. All tigers breed among themselves to produce the calves. So likewise, the individuals which resemble one another externally, that is morphologically, and also in the reproductive behavior, right, and which are capable of interbreeding among themselves to produce the fertile offsprings. So all these things put together, we call it as a species. Human beings is one species. Dalbergia latifolia, Indian rosewood, is another species, isn't it? So likewise, Felis leo, lion; Felis tigris, tiger; Felis domestica, cat. Cat and tiger belong to the same family, yet they are different species. A cat cannot breed with tiger, a tiger cannot breed with a cat. So that is how we can say the group of individuals which resemble one another. Externally they may resemble, and also in the reproductive behavior, but at the same time which are capable of interbreeding among themselves, so to produce the fertile offsprings. So such group of the individuals or an individual, we call it as a species. Now we know that one species, we can see this variation within the species. Homo sapiens are human beings. So no human being, including even twins, they do not exactly resemble in all the aspects. So slight variation you will see in every aspect. So why this variation occurs? This variation is occurring because of the genetic makeup. We know that in our body is made up of cells. Within the cells, we are having the chromosomes. Among human beings, we do have 46 chromosomes. And in these chromosomes, we find genes. genes. So every human being, a normal human being, is having 46 chromosomes, and in these 46 chromosomes we do find the genes, isn't it? And the number of genes and the arrangement of genes varies from one individual to another individual. Varies from one individual to another individual. No two individual in this world is having the same number and arrangement of the genes. Same number and same arrangement of genes cannot be seen in any two individuals exactly, and that is why we do show variation. We differ from each other, isn't it, externally? So such a variation that we are seeing among the living entities between two individuals, right, is called genetic variation. Is called genetic variation. So genetic variation occurs within a species between the individuals. Genetic variation, isn't it, occurs among the individuals of a single species, within a species. So that's what I am giving you the example of Homo sapiens. See, all, for example, mango you have seen, mango plant, mango fruit, all of you have eaten. So varieties and varieties of what this mango plant you have seen. How many varieties of mango probably you might have come across? 1, 2, 4, 10, 100, like this. You will say varieties and varieties of mango. Do these mango, though it is a mango plant, scientifically called Mangifera indica, Mangifera indica, yet the type of the fruits that we are consuming, say for example in Kannada we say Raspuri Hanno, Totapuri Hanno, Jirge Hanno, Alfonso Hanno, Neelam Hanno. Likewise, varieties we will come across, isn't it? So all these varieties of fruits, though it is in the same Mangifera plant, though it is the same species, the variation is because of the genetic makeup. So that variation that exists among the living entities, which is resulting in the variations among the individuals within a species, is called genetic diversity. So, for example, genetic variability or diversity is nothing but the variation that occurs between the individuals of a species. That is, within a species, you see the variation. Because, why this variation occurs? Because of the genetic makeup, gene arrangement, genetic constituents. For example, look at, there are 5,000 recorded varieties of mango and 88,000 recorded varieties of Oryza sativa, that is paddy, rice that we consume. Plenty of such variation is because of the variation within the genetic makeup. So that diversity, we call it as genetic diversity. Now, my question is that, do we need this genetic diversity? Do we really need this genetic diversity? One will say yes, right? Nobody, I think, will say no. If there is no variation, what will happen after species diversity? I will tell you all these things. Now, the next type of diversity is referred to as the species diversity. The diversity between different species. Diversity between different species. Though they belong to the same family, tiger and cat, yet they do show variation. Externally, they almost resemble. In spite of that, in the breeding behavior, they do not breed among themselves. Only cat breeds among its individuals and tiger breeds among its individuals. So that means this variation that exists between two different species is called species diversity. Is called species diversity. The next area, the next type of diversity is ecosystem diversity. See, look at in one and the same biogeographical area, same climatic conditions are there. So, and we can see the same soil type, isn't it? With all these things, we will see two different kinds of ecosystems. See, here a grassland you can see here, and here in the valleys of the mountains like regions, you will see the forest. So here you can see in another picture very clearly. This is called Shola forest. Forest is a different ecosystem. Grassland is a different ecosystem. Though they are present in one and the same geographical area, isn't it? The type of ecosystem, grassland ecosystem and what? Shola forest ecosystem. The animals, the trees and the other composition living entities present in a forest is different from the one which is present in a grassland. Normally in a grassland, you will see herbivores, isn't it? That is the vegetarian animals, isn't it? Being dominating. Here you can see both vegetarian and non-vegetarian, herbivores and carnivores, even omnivores may be present in a Shola forest. So, in other words, one ecosystem differs from another ecosystem, though they are present in the same biogeographical area, isn't it? So, it is not only like this. The grassland that are seen in, for example, if there is a grassland in Karnataka, if there is a grassland in Andhra Pradesh or Tamil Nadu or elsewhere, so the grassland, the type of the grass species, the plant species, the animal species present in this grassland of Karnataka differs from that of Tamil Nadu or Kerala or Andhra Pradesh likewise. So that means this variation that we can see between two ecosystems within a same biogeographical region is called ecosystem diversity. So thus biodiversity is very broadly categorized into three kinds: genetic diversity, species diversity and ecosystem diversity. So I will go back. So here genetic diversity, variation among the individuals within a species, then variation between the individuals of two different species is called species diversity. Then variation that occurs between two different ecosystems within a same region is called ecosystem diversity. Now all these diversity is important. All these diversity is required. Suppose you have breakfast today. Someone might have taken idli vada, someone might have taken chapati, someone taken fruits, someone might have taken egg. Look at this. All the individuals do not take the same kind of food, isn't it, at the same time? Why? Why? Because you have got a liking. You have got a liking for a specific type of food. You have got an affinity towards a perfect specific type of food. And you also select your food according to your requirement, according to your taste, according to your liking, likewise. And same type of food may not be available throughout the globe at the same time, in the same season, isn't it? Suppose you say mango fruits in March, April, May, do you find it in August, September? You may not be able to see. So, likewise, in different seasons of a year, in different biogeographical area, we need food energy. And the type of food energy that we are consuming also varies from one person to another person, one family to another family, one region to another region. And that is why nature has given so much of variations. And because all of us are dependent upon different types of food, all possible types of plants and animals are still surviving. For example, assume that all of us start eating idli morning today, entire world population, morning today idli, afternoon idli, night idli. Within 2 days, the rice plant will become extinct. It will disappear from the globe. To that extent, we are going to exploit it. But nature has given us, for the benefit of mankind, for the survival of the species, varieties and varieties of these organisms to obtain food energy. Food energy. Because for all our activities, we need energy. All living entities need energy. So that is why the basic requirement of any living substance or any living entity is to obtain energy, which can be obtained from various resources. So these resources can survive, they can exist, they can manifest in different biogeographical area, in different seasons, in different habitats, isn't it, throughout the year. And that is how they, and it is not only they should exist, they should adapt, they should survive, they should grow, they should multiply, they should complete their life cycle, and they should exist for the future generation. They should be available for the future stock also. So thus, that is why the diversity, biodiversity is very essential. So this is the basic requirement. Now, before telling about the other importance of biodiversity, let me show you a brief statistical figure related to the biodiversity. And I am displaying on the screen the total land area of the earth as to how many square kilometers, and population of the world almost about 7.8 billion as on today morning around 9 o'clock. I have taken this stat. Still it is increasing, population of the world. And as per the recent 2020 right estimation, so far the world forest cover is about 30.72%. Worldwide, we are having, globally, we are having 30.72%. And forest cover in India is about 807.276 square kilometer, giving a percentage of about 24.56% of the forest cover. Remember, this much of percentage of forest cover does not appear to be same in all the localities. For example, in India, if you consider, in Nagaland, Assam, Manipur, that side, the forest cover may be more than 45%. In Rajasthan, it may be less than 15%. So that means in different regions, though it is having different quantum or the different percentage of the forest cover or the vegetative cover, as a whole, if you consider a country, right, it varies from one country to another country. And as a whole, in the entire globe, if you consider, the world forest cover is found to be 30.72%. According to National Forest Policy as prescribed worldwide, so there should be 33% of forest cover is an ideal forest cover. In any biogeographical area, an ideal forest cover is 33%. But we are having only 30.72%, almost nearing to 3%, we are having the deficiency. And if you look at in India, we are having 24.56%, isn't it? Almost 10% less than what an ideal forest cover should be. So that is how we do have the forest cover. And if you consider the state of Karnataka, it is approximately around 20.2%. As on today, we are having about 20.2% of the forest cover. We know that forests are the main homes for many wild animals. So 40% of this global forest is distributed in South America, Africa, and South Asia. If we say there is 100% forest cover, that is, we do not have 100% forest cover, we are having 30.72% of the forest cover globally. Among this 30.72%, 40% of this global forest is being distributed or found in South America, Africa, and South Asia. And also globally, it has been estimated that about 5 to 100 million species are known to exist on this earth. No scientist can give an accurate data or statistical figure about the number of species present on this earth because all the species present on this earth is not being identified, is not being discovered, though they are existing, because there are many unexplored areas being present. So they make almost a rough approximation. That is why there is a huge variation even in the range that they are giving. So the scientists globally, they say 5 million to 100 million species may be present on this earth. And of this 5 to 100 million species, only about 1.9 million species have been catalogued so far. That means 1.9 million species have been catalogued so far. Cataloging. What is cataloging? That is identification and classification. Identification and classification of a living entity is called cataloging. Suppose you go to library, isn't it? You have seen, you have experienced cataloging. They will make how economics books in one rack, botany books in one rack, political science, languages, Kannada, English, likewise various books they are going to catalog it by subject wise, catalog it by author wise, isn't it? So that is called cataloging. Similarly, so far of the 5 to 100 million species, about 1.9 million species have been identified globally and also have been catalogued, classified. So how many species belongs to plants? How many species belongs to animals? How many species belongs to microorganisms? Among plants, how many of them are lower forms like algae, fungi, bryophytes, pteridophytes? Likewise, how many of them are higher forms like gymnosperms and angiosperms? So how many of them are flowering plants? How many of them are non-flowering plants? So likewise, all these classifications that they are going to say. Similarly, with respect to animals, whether it is having backbone or not, animals which are having backbone are called vertebrates. Animals which are having backbone, they are called vertebrates. Animals which do not have backbone, they are called invertebrates. They are called invertebrates. So among vertebrates and among invertebrates, if you consider, there are various groups. Amoeba, for example, it belongs to protozoa. Sponges, right? It belongs to porifera. Likewise, porifera, coelenterata, plantain, worms, annelids, earthworm, flatworm, liver, so many worms and other things, insects, cockroaches, butterflies. Look at this. So they have all been identified and classified among invertebrates. Even starfish in a marine ecosystem, sea cucumber. And if you consider the vertebrates, fishes, varieties and different species of fishes, amphibians, frogs, different groups, birds, different groups of birds. Likewise, even you will see mammals, different kinds of mammals. So all these classification, that means identification of an individual and then assigning a respective, what we can say, a systematic position for that particular species is nothing but classification. Now you see, we people are also going to classify ourselves as human beings, isn't it? So we always make cataloging, he and she basically, and then we start classifying, cataloging. How do we classify? Oh, he belongs to that caste, he belongs to this caste, he belongs to that religion, he belongs to that religion. Likewise, different religions, isn't it? Hindu, Christians, Muslims, Parsis, Sikhs, Jains. Look at that. And you are going to classify an individual. And when as soon as you are born, they are going to look at, even to give a name for you, isn't it? They start looking at ಯಾವ ನಕ್ಷತ್ರ, ಯಾವ ಗೋತ್ರ, ಯಾವ ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಒಂದು ಹೆಸರು ಇಡ್ತಾರೆ. Similarly, globally, when the species are going to be identified, they are going to be given a name, a scientific name is given. But unlike that of among human beings, no scientific name is going to be repeated. No scientific name is going to be repeated for the living entities across the globe. That is done by an international organization. Okay. Now, just I am telling you, identification and assigning a systematic position to which category it belongs, to which class, to which family, to which order, to which kingdom it belongs, plant or animal or phylum, likewise. So, this assignment of or assigning a living entity a systematic position is called cataloging. So, identification and assigning the systematic position or classification is called cataloging. So far, only about 1.9 million species have been cataloged. Now, among these, most of these species are present in such regions of the world which are identified as hotspots. That means a spot which is very much hot. Is it so? Is it like that? It is not like that. That means hotspot region is a region where there is enormous number of species. Species richness is there. I will come to this hotspot later on, a little bit after a few slides. So there are about 36 such recognized hotspots as on today in the world, which house plenty of number of species. Which type of species? Endemic species. I am using a scientific word, endemic species. What is meant by endemic species? In other words, endemic species is a species which is born and brought up in a particular biogeographical area, which has been originated in a particular biogeographical area. In other words, it is nothing but the ecological state of being native to a particular area. That is called endemic species. Suppose you are born in Mysore. And settled in Delhi. Which one is your native place? You will say Mysore is your native place. So that means though you are settled in Delhi, you are endemic to Mysore. In other words, you are originated in a particular geographical area. So this native place of a living entity is called endemic place, endemic species. The process by which a species is originated in a particular biogeographical area is called endemism. So thus, hotspot regions are rich in endemic species. Not only the number of species are very much in number, and how do you identify a hotspot? That also I will come to later. Okay, just for the moment, to understand that in a hotspot region there is species richness. So greater number of species are present, especially endemic species are present in that area, and that is how about 36 such hotspots have been recognized in the world. And among the species of plants and animals that have been identified, if you say there are 100% species, 44.4% of this global plant species, 44.4% of the global plant species, and 35.3% of the vertebrate species. Vertebrate means, as I told you earlier, the species which are having the backbone, So they are called vertebrate species. So only among vertebrate species, for ignoring in the sense, in a hotspot region, I am telling you, 34.4% of the plant species and 35.3% of the vertebrate species are found in these hotspot regions. That means hotspot region is a region which is rich in enormous number of species, including the endemic species. And in India, the total geographical area is just 328.7 million hectares. That means India occupies just 2.47% of the world geographical area and has only 1% of the forest. If you say 30 point, right, 2% of the world forest cover, if you say, among that, so our contribution, India's contribution to the world forest cover is just only 1%. And India has a population of about 17.74%, right, of the world population, right, and the same statistical at decimal place it is varying in 2020. And India is rich in having a very good percentage of cattle population. It is having approximately about 31.05% of the cattle population. And India has the largest cattle inventory in the world, followed by Brazil and China. That means our geographical area is just 328.7 million hectares, isn't it? And it is not increasing. But our population is increasing. Cattle population is increasing. So where do you find the place, or the what we can say the habitat for the increasing population of the cattle as well as the human beings to settle down? So that is how over exploitation of these resources, habitat destruction, habitat fragmentation, all these are all taking place. So to meet our requirements, we are cutting the forest, isn't it? We are butchering the forest, we are butchering the animals. So likewise, what I am trying to tell you here is that our geographical area is limited, but our population is increasing. So there is no proper balance between the resources and their utilization. Probably an economist will understand the theory of demand and supply, how it is going to, if an imbalance is there, how it is going to affect the economy. So likewise, in terms of the capital of the natural resources, if you consider, and if you take particularly the bioresources, that is the variation or the resources that we see among the living entities, biodiversity in other words. So how much of pressure probably we are putting on our biodiversity? See, roughly about 64% of the world's cattle are in India, Brazil, and China. Excuse me. Roughly 64% of the world's cattle are in India, Brazil, and China. So that's how we are having a vast number of the population of what we can say is these humans as well as the cattle. And also, if you consider that there is 100% biodiversity in this globe, India's contribution is about 12.53%. India's contribution to the world biodiversity is just 12.53%. So of this, India has about 3.9% of the grasslands, 2% of hot deserts, 4.1 million hectares of the wetland ecosystems. So that means, look at the variation, though India is having a geographical area of 328.7 million hectares of the land with enormous cattle population and human population. With all these things in a given space, in a given place, we do have plenty of biodiversity. So we are still rich in biodiversity. And in India, we have recorded about 49,000 plus species of wild plants and 89,000 plus species of wild animals. So, worldwide 1.9 million species have been catalogued. 1.9 million species have been catalogued. Among this, in India, we have recorded 49,000 plus. I have used here plus and 89,000 plus animals. Why I am using is because no individual can give an exact accurate figure of this number of wild plants and animals present in India. Now we are discussing about these aspects. Now some of the plants might have been eliminated by this time and some new species might have been arrived, isn't it? So because evolution is taking place, so it is a gradual process, it is not all of a sudden. So whereas our anthropogenic activities, human activities is so rapid through our industrialization, urbanization, over exploitation, we can eliminate everything within fraction of a second. We can destroy anything, isn't it? To that extent we are losing our species. But so far as on today, about 49,000 plus species of wild plants and 89,000 plus species of wild animals are reported in India. What do you mean by a wild species? I'm going to ask you, are you a wild species? Definitely you are not a wild species. The paddy that we are eating, the rice that we are eating, is it a wild plant? No, it is a cultivated, isn't it? So, any plant or an animal which is neither cultivated nor domesticated is called a wild species. Any plant or an animal which is neither cultivated nor domesticated is called a wild species. In other words, a wild species is the one which is born and brought up in a particular biogeographical area. A wild species is the one which is born and brought up in a particular biogeographical area over a period of time, through the process of evolution. So a species which has been brought up through the process of evolution in a geographical area, we call it as a wild species. So from those wild species, through continuous breeding programs, if you grow a plant or if you can give rise to an individual, then it is called cultivation or domestication. So we are all domesticated individuals. So if you trace back our ancestors, father, grandfather, great grandfather, likewise, you go back to ancestral man, isn't it? That ancestral man is having the stocks from maybe the monkey-like animals, isn't it? So likewise, they are all the species which have been naturally evolved, including the ancestral man, right? So likewise, Pithecanthropus, like that, there are various types of ancestral human species. So such type of species are the wild species. So a species which is born and brought up in a particular biogeographical area over a period of time through the process of evolution, we call them as wild species. Hope you have understood as to mean what do you mean by a wild species. So how many such wild species are present in India? 49,000 plus species of wild species of plants and 89,000 plus species of wild animals are present in India. And at least 320 species of wild relatives of crops have been originated here. For example, I will tell you, wild species. Today we are eating ragi. Ragi is a plant that it has been cultivated. So if you can go back to who are its wild relatives, Scientifically, I am telling you. So this ragi has been cultivated, and if you look at their parents, if you start analyzing the genetic makeup of these individuals, so it has been originated by the natural hybridization of two different species. Just try to listen here. It is nothing but Eleusine africana and Eleusine indica. Eleusine africana and Eleusine indica. So now these are two naturally evolved species given to us by nature. So during their natural hybridization, they produced a species which we today eating it as the ragi plant or Eleusine caracena. So this hybridization was taking place among the plants when the land mass was together before continental drift. At the time of continental separation, some of the species of Eleusine africana so passed on to that land mass, and indica passed on to the Asian continent, and the hybrid seeds that are formed by the hybridization of these things has fallen on the land mass of India. And the ancestral man started eating the tassel. He used to eat it, the grains, and spread it, throw it here and there. That is how the plant started spreading across India, and it found a suitable soil, suitable habitat for flourishing. And as the evolution has started progressing with the advent of the modern man, he started using, cultivating, and consuming this ragi plant. So that is how its real original wild relatives are nothing but the wild species are nothing but africana and indica. So now the ragi plant has been subsequently through various genetic programs, breeding programs have been manipulated to produce varieties of ragi. So that is how we started cultivating this particular plant. Likewise, there are more than 320 species of wild relatives of crops are reported in India. So just one example I gave you as to how the wild species are important even in producing the varieties of the crops. Now in India, about 1,41,000 species of plants, animals, and microbes are recorded. So, and more than 4 lakh species are yet to be identified. So in India, still there are many areas which have been unearthed or unexplored, right? So more than 4 lakh species are yet to be identified. Now, I would like to say, there is one international body called IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. When it was started, the body was named as IUPN, International Union for Protection of Nature. Later on, the name has been changed as IUCN. And in 1990s, so this IUCN name has been changed as WCU. WCU. That means World Conservation Union. World Conservation Union. However, till today, it has become a practice to retain this terminology IUCN for the international organization, that is International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. Right. Now recently, that is, as I told you, in 1990s, it has been changed as WCU. Now globally, almost all countries have become a member of this particular organization. So it comprises various members or representatives from various countries, and under this body there are various scientists, researchers, foresters, wildlife biologists, public, everybody has been occupied different roles of collecting the information related to a plant or an animal in their area and disseminating the same information to their authorities. So likewise, information related to or the details related to any plant or an animals is pulled in from different biogeographical areas by different countries and by different people, and ultimately they are going to assess what is the population size of these species. What is the population size? What is their exact number? Approximately they are able to estimate it. So whether their number, right, globally is at stake, or is it what in a good size. So likewise they are going to assess it. If the number of this, sorry, if the number of these individuals of a species, right, is coming down, so to take up certain measures to protect them, so they basically wanted to identify what is the status of these species. So in order to assess this, once they assess the status of a species with respect to their population size, then they started giving various classes or various categories to them. So such categories, very precisely I am telling you, one such category is extinct. So a species which is not definitely located in the wild and never sighted even once in the last 50 years is considered to be an extinct species. In other words, if a species has been totally disappeared from the globe, you would call it as an extinct species. Dinosaurs, are they living now? They are not. So they are totally have become extinct. Likewise, any species which has been totally disappeared and is not at all seen. For example, cheetah. Cheetah, we say. Even for leopards also we use the word cheetah. Chirte in Kannada. Chirte no, actually at present it is not there. It has become extinct. So likewise there are many species which have been totally disappeared from the globe, and a species which is not at all located in anywhere in the natural forest, right, and which has been not seen in the past 50 years or so is declared as an extinct species. So likewise, the IUCN has also given certain categories. Endangered species, the first another category. That means a species which is not yet disappeared but likely to disappear in the near future if the causal factors for what? For the disappearance. So how a species can all of it disappear? It may be due to habitat destruction, it may be due to pollution, it may be due to over exploitation or killing, or it may be due to some other factors, even due to disease. So likewise, if a species is likely to decrease, its population has decreased even well below the number of 50 or so. So if the population size is very much reduced or decreased because of the various factors of the environment, including the anthropogenic activities. So if a species is likely to become extinct, then such species is considered as an endangered species. That means in the near future, it is likely to become extinct if the causal factors continue to operate. If the causal factors continue to operate. Then there is another category just beneath that, that is vulnerable. Now, these are certain categories where the species are likely to move into the endangered category. Means their population of the species is slightly better than endangered species. So slightly better than. If it is, for example, for a species, if endangered state is the size population size is 50, so this may be some 100, say for example, it is 100 in population, so it is considered as a vulnerable species. So population size wise it is better than the endangered category, but if the utilization of this species, plant or an animal, continue to take place And if the habitat destruction or pollution or anything, if it all continue to operate, then it may also likely to move into the endangered category. So if a species which is declared under vulnerable category is likely to move into the endangered category if the causal factors continue to operate, but at present their population size is better than the population size of endangered species. Similarly, still higher the population than the vulnerable species is the rare species. They are in packets. They are in packets here and there globally. So such group of, that means to a restricted biogeographical area, in the restricted places, we can see these species which have been identified as rare species. For example, we have seen black buck near that Gujarat, isn't it? And also in Karnataka, we will say Rani Bennu in Haveri district, black buck. It is a rare species. Though it is endangered, now they say, but it is a rare species restricted to certain geographical areas. So such species are identified as rare species. Now there are certain species which are identified as indeterminate species. Indeterminate. That means there are, for example, I will tell you, there is one plant called Thalictrum dolzeli. It is a scientific name, one plant, right? So one plant or one species is there which is considered as an indeterminate species. There is only one plant. That plant is reported in Baba Budan Hills of Chikmagalur district in Karnataka. In Karnataka, there is a Baba Budan Hills, probably the second highest peak that we can see with the mountains. So Mullayanagiri is the first one. So in that region, this particular plant has been reported, and there are only one or two plants that are being located in that area. But we do not know how to classify this particular plant. So that means, though by external features and other things we may give some classification, but exactly how it is going to multiply, how it is going to reproduce, what are all its relatives, so nothing can be traced out, because if you want to study this, you should exploit the plant. If you cut the plant or exploit the plant, it will become extinct. So that means there are certain species about which no sufficient information is available, no sufficient data is available to assign them a particular category. So such species are called indeterminate species. Such species are called indeterminate species. So that means all these species, different categories have been given by IUCN, and it is being published in a book called Red Data Book. It is called Red Data Book. The concept of this Red Data Book was first conceived by a scientist called Sir Peter Scott. Sir Peter, S-I-R, Sir Peter, P-E-T-E-R, S-C-O-T-T, Scott, in the year 1960. So he conceived this idea of put forthing this Red Data Book. Now this Red Data Book, the first such Red Data Book was published in the year 1964, and subsequently once in 4 years normally they update the information related to the endangered species or vulnerable species, like all these species, in the Red Data Book. And why this book has been named as Red Data Book? Why this book has been named as Red Data Book? That means the names of the organisms or the names of the plants and animals that have been listed in this Red Data Book, they are almost in various type of categories, especially in endangered category or vulnerable category or rare category or indeterminate category. So they have to be protected. They are likely to be in endangered state. So to signify that endangering, they named it as red data. Red color indicates danger, isn't it? Endangered condition. Also, suppose you are moving in a vehicle. If a red signal comes, what will you do? You will stop. So that means red also signifies stop killing, stop exploiting, stop destroying the species that have been mentioned in this red data book. To signify these two things, so they have named it as red data book. Had it were to be named as green data book, go ahead, use it, kill it, isn't it? That would have been the significance. So that will not give any information. So that is why here, so for these species which are in the threatened category, so they have been aptly, the book has been named as the red data book. So based on these things, worldwide, scientists and the administrators and even everyone should look into as to how to protect. All these information are useful for us. So which species are endangered, which species are vulnerable, which is likely to move into the extinct category. So how to protect it, how to conserve it. So to formulate protection or conservation strategies, so this type of information will be very useful. So that is why one should be aware of these IUCN categories or red data book. Now, with this information in background, I would also like to say that now I told you hotspot. So a hotspot is a region which is rich in species, especially endemic species. What is endemism? Endemism is the ecological state of being unique to a particular place. In other words, species native to a particular geographical area is called endemic species. For example, king cobra is endemic to Western Ghats, Indian rosewood, slender loris. They are all Western Ghats endemic to Western Ghats region. So how many such endemic species must be there in any geographical area to call it as a hotspot? There must be a minimum of 1,500 endemic species must be there. 1,500 endemic species must be there in any geographical area to call it as a hotspot. That is number one. How do you identify a hotspot region in the world is the question. So an hotspot in the world or in any region can be identified mainly by two criteria. One is a species richness with as many as a minimum of 1,500 endemic species must be there, number one. Number two, the degree of threat should be high. The degree of threat. Threat means once the number of species is more, the utilization, the exploitation for these species will be automatically also more. So that means the degree of threat also will be very high. So such regions where there is a high degree of threat for the species and a minimum of 1,500 endemic species are there, such regions are called what? Hotspot regions. And in India, there are 4 such hotspots. In India, there are 4 such hotspots. So they are Eastern Himalayas, Western Ghats. I will show you in the next class, in the next slide, Indo-Burma region and Sundaland. So that is what? A hotspot is the one wherein a minimum of 1,500 species of the world species which are endemics should be present and the degree of threat also should be high. So these are the 2 criteria by which a hotspot region is going to be identified. And in India, there are 4 such hotspots. And worldwide, there are 36 hotspots. Worldwide, there are 36 hotspots. And the 4 hotspots in India are Western Ghats, Eastern Himalayas, Indo-Burma region, because Indo-Burma region, Sundaland, Indonesia, part of forest from Indonesia, Malaysia, and parts of India from Nicobar Islands. Because you cannot demarcate the boundary, you cannot exactly mark the boundary of a forest, isn't it? So you cannot because the forest is going to stretch from one geographical area to another geographical area. So even this Western Ghats is extended up to Sri Lanka. Remember, it is extended up to Sri Lanka. So likewise, even the forests of Burma is extended to India, or India is extended to Burma region. Similarly, the forests of Indonesia, Malaysia and Nicobar Islands, in that belt, that area put together, you call it as Sundaland. So thus, 4 such hotspots are being present in India, and worldwide there are 36 such hotspots. These are the regions which are very much rich in biodiversity, I told you 44.4% of the plant species and 35.3% of the vertebrate species are present in such regions which are referred to as the hotspot regions. Now, after knowing all these information, now the question is, why we need biodiversity? Shall I give a break? Okay. Hello? I will give you a break here.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, we shall continue. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I take away much time bit. I could not notice the time. Okay.
Okay, sir, it's okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We shall rejoin at 11:45.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.